I'm going to say hello, Matrix Live. It's Ben here, and I'm here with Bruno, who you may know and you may love from the Element team. Hey,
Hello.
hey. But we're not talking about Element today, even though your day job is to work on Element Web.
Exactly.
We're talking about hydrogen, which was previously Brawl.
Yes.
Cool.
Um, right. Where do you want to start?
Oh, I don't know.
Lots to talk about.
Why don't we start with what are you doing for Element Web in general? What's your job?
Right. Yeah. I'm one of the developers on Element Web. So all of us touch mostly all of the parts of Element Web. Um, in the past, I've worked on verification of cross signing, the composer,
Mm.
lazy loading. Yeah, lots of different
Yeah,
things
loads
really.
of things. Oh,
Yeah.
since like 2018, I think.
Yeah, I've been with the company for 2 years now. Yeah,
Wow,
a little over 2 years.
cool. So what's I guess the big things out of that? Lazy loading was a pain, I remember, but cross
That was my
signing,
first project. Yeah, that
yeah,
was diving in at the deep end.
yeah, man, that was. I mean, back when the Riot web code base was what it was. Um,
After lazy loading, it was the redesign, the
mhm,
1.0 redesign.
yeah.
I worked a lot on that.
Mm.
Um, what came after that? Yeah, it's a long time.
Well,
Editing.
oh
Um,
wow, man, it's
yeah,
crazy to think how much has been done in the last 2 years.
editing. Yeah, and then out of that came a new composer.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Which is, what are we using? Slate, or did we move from Slate?
We moved from Slate. Now we're using something custom that was
Ah,
originally built while working on editing.
right. Oh, okay.
Because it handles international inputs better, like
Right.
Chinese, Japanese, and Korean.
Ah, so
That
okay.
was a
Oh,
lot.
so wait a minute. Do we maintain that? That seems
Yeah,
like wow, cool. It seems like work because I mean, with Slate, you're kind of outsourcing it to Facebook.
yeah, but yeah, we had these long-standing issues with it. I mean, we went over several libraries, I think.
Mm.
So the editor I ended up writing for editing
Mm.
uh, is dubbed Cider,
Oh yeah, I remember this
and
now.
before Cider, we ended up using I think two or three other libraries written one, yeah, Slate.
Hmm.
Can't remember all of them, but yeah, we definitely give that path a go. But yeah, the international input problems, yeah, were hard to solve with those libraries. So in
Right.
the end,
Okay.
we're all their own.
I didn't know all that. Cool. I mean, that does. The thing is, it's the kind of uh, like detail and depth that goes into recording us to go into making something like that that people just wouldn't normally see. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you can imagine, cross browser compatibility can be sketchy in those areas, especially like content editable.
Right. Um. So what were you working on React before that as well? Is it, are you would you call yourself a React developer?
Um, I wouldn't. I mean, I've done React before this, but I think for anyone to call them a React developer is painting yourself a bit in a corner.
All
Maybe
right.
I don't
Okay.
know. Um, it's just software, like other
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all von Neumann, right? Data in, data out. It's all the
yeah.
same. Okay. Um. Sorry. So I've just got notes. So wait a minute. So you moved back to your homelands. I think that was this year.
That was yeah, the end of last year in
Last year.
December.
Okay.
Yeah, before I was in Berlin, Germany, and
Hmm.
I'm originally from Belgium. And yeah, me and my girlfriend we moved to Brussels
Hmm.
last end of last year, which, given how 2020 has turned out, has been an interesting time.
I mean, everything in the world has changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You arrive at a new city, and yeah, you start exploring it, and after 2 months, everything is closed down. It's
It's
quite interesting. We actually ended up spending several months in France during the summer now,
right. Okay. But
because we can
you're
both do
in
remote work.
right. Of course. I mean, if you're remote anyway, then you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're in Brittany now, Britannia.
Yeah. 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 Right.
Cool. Cool. I mean, I can see from your nautically themed room
The
there.
sea is right there.
It's washed out. I can't see that.
Yeah. Let's see.
Can we see it?
Yeah. No, that's gonna be hard.
No, not really. All right, that's okay. We believe you. We believe you. It's not a prop. The sea is a real thing. So after working on Element, which is Riot, for several years, you started a new project, a personal project, which you called Brawl.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted something that, as a lot of people in software when they start a project,
Hmm.
had sounded a bit like my own name and reminded a bit of the project that it was trying to imitate, if you will.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
a small riot being a brawl and starting with BR. That's how,
Oh,
that's how that
wow.
name came about.
I didn't know that. That is a phenomenal English language pun. Amazing. A small riot that sounds like Bruno is
Yeah.
Brawl. That's superb. Honestly, I didn't. That's news to me on this call.
It
But
started out as Morpheus way in the beginning, but I thought that was a shitty name. Yeah.
yeah, I think there are other
Well,
projects
yeah.
called that. And
Yeah,
also,
exactly. Not a
I mean,
shitty name, but
are we
not
done
unique.
with Matrix the movie puns? I don't think we'll ever be done. I don't think we'll ever run out. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So
But
yeah.
Brawl, I actually started it already over a year and a half ago. So I was
Ah.
at the company for 6 months then.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Cool. And the motivation was for it to be small.
The motivation for it was twofold, really. After 6 months, I felt like I had a bit of an idea what could be improved on the Riot Web.
Hmm.
And also, I wanted a Matrix client. That was the main reason. I wanted a Matrix client that ran on my phone at the time, a Windows 10 mobile phone.
I forgot
Um,
about that. Yeah.
yes, that was the main reason. I like. I don't like the idea of switching your hardware to support some kind of software. Software should run everywhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I'm all for
and
that. Yeah.
especially lower end hardware. Like my personal laptop is still like one of those Lenovo X200s with
Okay.
LibreBoot on it, which is like,
Oh wow.
yeah, the oldest 64-bit computer you can find with
Huh.
like a free BIOS and all that.
Huh.
Anyway,
Okay.
yeah, I like the idea of reusing hardware, so I didn't want to get rid of my phone,
Hmm.
and but also already then Windows Phone wasn't supported anymore, so I thought, okay, maybe writing an app in C# will be a bit too much of investment.
Hmm.
If I do end up switching phone, I'd
Right.
rather not have my effort being wasted
Yeah. Yeah. Quite right.
by a native Windows Phone app. So I
Hmm.
started with a web app,
Hmm.
which also, yeah, was closer to my day job.
Hmm.
And yeah, basically writing it as an offline HTML5 app on Edge 15,
Okay.
which is yeah, a bit of a different beast than what we call modern browsers. So yeah, I had to make quite some adjustments to make it work. But yeah, in the end, it worked quite well. I mean, it worked quite well up to the feature set that Braille supported,
Right.
which was
Yes.
sending messages unencrypted, receiving them,
Okay. Okay.
and backfilling, basically. Yeah.
Um. I mean, and was it the Edge 15 must have had, it must have lacked a lot of niceties like fetch. I guess you were doing a lot of Ajax calls
It
quite
actually
manually.
has fetch.
Ah,
The biggest issue was with IndexedDB not
right.
supporting uh, array keys.
Ah,
So I had to, yeah, basically stringify a key manually there,
huh.
and some CSS, and also, of course, doesn't support ES modules. So I had to
Hmm.
bundle everything up, but you have to do it anyway for production.
Yeah. But so the
Um,
IndexedDB thing's interesting to me. I thought that the whole value of that was that it was a standard API.
yes, but it has several versions. I
Okay.
think array keys are in version 2, and Edge 15 doesn't support version
Fair
2.
enough. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft weren't desperately motivated to keep maintaining, a phone with, um, you know, 3 or 4 dozen users. So it,
Yeah,
it, it was hard for them to justify keeping that kind of support, I think.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Even without their support, it worked well. It's just
Hmm.
so as a lot of people, I also use other messaging services like WhatsApp.
Mm.
And the end of last year, WhatsApp decided to stop offering
Yeah.
WhatsApp for Windows Phone, and that was the reason I actually ended up with an Android device
Wow,
now.
that's funny, isn't it? The
Yeah,
headline is going to be Element developer so interested in WhatsApp that's what's causing him to change his behavior.
Yeah, I mean, you have to live in the world we live in, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Um, so yeah, but I ran Brawl on that for a good year. Yeah,
Yeah.
Windows 10
I mean,
phone.
so but the limitation would have come to you quickly because Riot went E2E default in that time.
Yeah, uh, yeah, uh,
That was this
that
year, I
was
think.
this year though. Yeah, and I had already turned to Android, but yeah, um, yeah, that was like the next thing on my to-do list for Brawl, implement D2E, especially after it became default. Yeah, it became more painful to not have
Yeah.
it.
So what's the relationship between Brawl and Hydrogen? Because the project is now called Hydrogen.
Yes. So a couple of weeks back, so for the last few months, there had been some discussions about how to deal with tech debt on on Element Web.
Mm.
And yeah, the ideas of Brawl were sort of seen as a good way, as a good inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, bringing that to a project like Element Web that has existed for what is it, 4 or 5 years now, is not
Mm.
trivial to say the least. So yeah, those conversations stalled a bit, and then Matthew 3 weeks ago
Mm-hmm.
um, came up with a customer of ours that actually wants a Matrix client that runs in IE11.
Yeah.
You heard that well, IE11.
Yeah.
So it's still a very different beast from Edge 15 that we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so we thought, why not take Brawl and make it look a bit like Element, like change the styling,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
add some features, basically avatars, um, display names, and E2E,
Mm-hmm.
and use that as a lightweight fallback line for organizations that, for one reason or another, are still tied to I11.
Got it.
So that's the idea behind Hydrogen, and yeah, of course, we had to change the name, and I think
Ah.
Hydrogen sort of explains itself, a
Uh-huh.
lightweight element.
Yeah. It's the lightest element.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
also with fewer, yeah, fewer things around it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how Hydrogen was born. That's 3 weeks ago, and yeah, since then I've added avatars, display names, like automatic backfilling,
Mm-hmm.
make it also room list sorting, which is still a bit sketchy.
Automatic backfill. Sorry, meaning you scroll up.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Not 8 pages up for you. Okay.
no, not yet. Well, if you open a room, it will page up
Mm-hmm.
up
Okay.
to fill the screen, but
Right.
then you have to scroll up. Yeah, there's still a bit of issues with the scroll jumping, and also the room list sorting. I think I fixed it today, but the room sorting isn't always stable. Sometimes the room jump around a bit. But yeah, basically have a usable room list
Mm-hmm.
and a usable timeline, and make it look familiar if you're used to Element Web. That's the
Yeah,
goal.
brill. I mean
Yeah.
that's and what are its sort of vital statistics? How big is it, and yeah, how big is the deployment? I should say.
Right. So the build makes 2 JavaScript bundles, one for modern browsers, which is 250K or something kilobytes of JavaScript.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the ES5 build for IE11 is like 600 something.
Right. And
It's
it's
like three
mostly
times the
polyfill.
size. Polyfills, and basically ES5 being a lot more verbose than ES6.
Right. Got it. Cool.
Yeah. And yeah, some fonts, and like the tar GZ bundle is like 2 MB with all the assets in it.
And regarding end to end, are you using the JS SDK for that?
No, using the JS SDK for that would be very, very hard because they're designed in very different ways. Brawl, well, Hydrogen rather, makes very heavy use of IndexedDB transactions to make your whole client more robust, basically.
Okay.
So a network request, like a sync or a backfill, is always persisted in a transaction. So if you do a sync, you will receive a new sync token from the server, and that's the token you should use for your next sync. In Hydrogen, we first do the request, and then in one transaction, we write the new sync token, and also all the changes that that sync provoked in the whole storage layer in one transaction. And that makes that you always are in a consistent state, basically. So if at any point you would reload your client, you would never have the wrong sync token. You would never either lose things that need to be changed in your storage or have the wrong sync token. They're always in sync because of the transactional support in IndexedDB.
Got it. Okay.
And
I didn't know.
that like bleeds throughout the whole architecture in the lower level. There's a few more differences with the JS SDK, but yeah.
Right. But so what that means is that you've had to implement the Olm calculations. Yeah, you've had to re-implement those.
No. So we looked at several options for implementing E2E. It's by no means done yet. I started this week, and it's very early days. But we looked at two options, or we're still looking at two options. One is the Rust SDK crypto layer. Compile that to, for IE11 to asm.js, which is like a reduced set of JavaScript that runs a bit faster in the browser, and also to WASM for modern browsers. And use that SDK, and that is looking like it. It's going to be too restrictive especially because of IE11. And the other option is I can dig deeper into that later on. And the other option is to reuse libolm. So the JS SDK also uses a library called libolm, which has all the cryptographic, more than just primitives. It handles all the cryptography of end-to-end encryption. It just doesn't use the matrix protocol part.
Right. Okay.
And that's the other option I'm looking into now. It's basically everything that the JS SDK does on top of libolm, we have to do as well. Which is a bit of work, but I think it's manageable. So now I'm looking at uploading one-time keys and the device keys. From that point on, a Hydrogen client would be recognized by all the other, by Element Web as an E2E capable client once your keys are uploaded.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that will be a milestone. And then doing Olm encryption for two-device messages, so we can receive MegaOlm keys, and then MegaOlm builds on top of that. Yeah, all of that has to be implemented, but using libolm. The Rust SDK, so Olm encryption and decryption is actually, it takes even on the modern browsers, can take like a couple of 100 milliseconds. On IE11, it actually takes up to a second.
Wow.
We're probably going to have to run that decryption and encryption in a pool of web workers to make use of multi-threading to make it acceptably, somewhere near acceptably fast.
Gosh.
And that's another requirement that just makes it hard to use an existing SDK.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, compiling Rust to asm.js, debugging that is just no fun.
Oh, really?
If anything goes wrong, it's just a black box. And
I mean, that's a big shame, though, because I know that the Rust SDK is getting some usage in these areas because is it Daydream? MTR Nord's new project is basically doing the same thing, but they don't have these draconian restrictions that you have around needing to support ancient browsers.
Exactly. Yes. Daydream, if I get it right, I think it's also completely written in Rust.
Yes. Yeah. To be fair.
Which
it makes it easier.
It might make it a bit easier, but because if you the end-to-end layer is sort of mid-level. If you do that at the libolm level, it's a bit easier to integrate. If you go all the way, it might be a bit easier to integrate, but halfway can be a bit more complicated because it's getting some usage, and I got to know the API a bit. It's actually quite quite nicely designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Wait,
Rust is a
wait.
great language.
Oh, sorry. That you got to know the REST SDK API.
Yeah, I looked at it a bit this
Okay.
week,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, the API of the crypto layer is quite nicely
Yeah.
designed.
Well, I mean, that's Polya for you. That's
Yeah, yeah.
he wrote the most popular Python SDKs too. Um, so let's. All right. I feel like we've talked a lot about the technical stuff. Let's talk about some of the softer stuff. How is it? Basically, a personal project of yours has been upgraded, we should say, to something that you're now paid to do. Is that something that's good and you're proud, or have you had your hobby taken off you and turned into work? Which is it?
Uh, Mostly the former.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy to be able to work on this during the day,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I mean, it's a new code base. It's always more fun to work on that than
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a code base that's 4 or 5 years old.
Of course.
Um, and yeah, in some ways, it's a bit my baby. So
Mm-hmm.
that's fun to do as a day job. I am aware that yeah, I can't be too protective of it,
Right.
and
Yeah. Client
uh,
needs.
client needs exactly. Yeah, like E2E, the Rust SDK, sort of also yeah. It wouldn't have been my choice to look into that because of the integration being quite
Right.
painful with WebAssembly, and also yeah, the ethos a bit of the whole project is to keep tight control of how the code is integrated and dependencies.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
So yeah, yeah, I tried my best to have a balanced view there.
All right. No, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, there's no wrong answer. And I suppose the other thing is, it's a very different way of working to working on Element Web, which is a much less agile project. It's it's got a lot more technical debt. It's got huge integrations, and React itself is obviously quite sturdy. Do you feel? How does it feel when you're switching between these projects? Because has it made you think, oh God, React's so cumbersome. I don't need all this.
Um, well, I think so. Hydrogen is the code is organized in an MVVM
Hmm.
architecture, if you will, where all of the presentation logic goes into view models, which
Okay.
don't know anything about your view layer. Um, they just expose properties,
Yep.
and those properties get mapped to DOM nodes, basically.
Mm.
So the view layer is very, very thin.
Okay.
It's also one of my dreams to actually write a second and multiple UIs on top of this.
Right. Okay.
Like GTK JS is a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
JavaScript binding for GTK,
Oh.
and because
Hmm.
almost all of the logic is not in the view layer, that would actually not be too hard to do.
Interesting.
So I feel like in an architecture like this, React gives you a lot less benefits because, yeah, like the view layer I ended up writing my own view layer for Hydrogen, but it's like 500 lines of code,
Mm.
and one of the reasons of not doing it, I wanted to try and see how far I got with having a development environment where you don't use transpilation.
Yep. Oh, so this is
Um,
all pure JavaScript then.
this is all pure JavaScript. There's no transpiler running in the background if you're developing for it. There's just a static web server that serves you ECMAScript modules.
Okay. So you can be
Um,
very quick then. Basically, you type code and it either breaks or
yeah,
it updates.
it
Yeah.
goes back to the origin of the web. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
basically
Nice.
type and reload.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is very nice, and the debugging experience is quite nice. I feel
Hmm.
on it. Why did I bring this up? Right, React. So yeah, you can run React without transpilation, but also yeah, after having debugged React for quite a bit in Element Web,
Hmm.
sometimes I feel it doesn't pull its weight if you would only use what Hydrogen needs. Uh,
Right.
it
Yeah.
it brings too much complexity for what it gives you.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's why I went that way. And in general, I feel like it's a good asset for a software project that it's going to have a long run, like it's going to be worked on for a long time, for years to come, hopefully. To be in very tight control of your dependencies and how the code is integrated. I feel it's not always a wise thing to do to give that up too quickly just to save like a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, I feel, it can come with quite high maintenance cost.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's really a business situation. If you need that feature now, and there's a dependency that does it, then there's a natural inclination to do that.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, I'm by no means against using libraries. But you've got different libraries and like dependencies that don't spread all of your code base are a bit of a no-brainer. Like I just added a dependency to Hydrogen for canonical JSON because I need that for E2E. I'm not going to write that myself. It's going to be called in one place in the code base, but something like React or I don't know, something else is going to be all over your code base. It's very hard to change that once. Once you go with that, and with those kind of dependencies, I'm a bit more cautious.
So I want to come back to the. Sorry, we've actually been talking for ages, but I do want to come back to one thing, which was your comments about MVVM, which I thought was. I must say, I thought it was much out of fashion. I'm not a front-end dev full-time myself, but I didn't think that was a very common use case any longer. Is there scope for people to contribute a new view layer themselves? How easy would it be for somebody to say, just take your model and view model and just put their own view layer in? Like so ultimate theming.
I think the current view layer for the browser is around 1,000 lines of code. Well, that's maybe 1,500 with the generic like sort of frameworky bits to it. I think like a GTK UI for the UI that is already there would be like maybe roughly the same.
Wow.
Maybe a bit more, like give or take 2,000 lines of code maybe. The whole project is 6,000 lines of code, so it gives you a bit of an idea of where the balance lies, I think. Well, I'm comparing commented code and non-commented code here. So I think I calculated it once. It was like 13% of the code is view code.
Okay. So most of the work is being done. I mean, that's what MVVM is. Most of the work is being done outside the view.
Yeah. So the idea would be to use all the view models and just have those being consumed by another view layer that is not your DOM view layer.
That's phenomenal. I can see a new GTK app coming out before you can get around to it.
Yeah, if somebody wants to do that, it would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
The only risk there is that everything is moving quite fast. So,
okay.
But yeah.
All right, we've talked for ages. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
So the plan for Hydrogen is to adding E2E now. IE11 has brought a bit more complications than anticipated, so I was hoping to get it done in 2 weeks, but that's probably not going to be feasible. But we want to get it done at least in the coming weeks, have something working, because we need it for our client.
I love that we've got clients that are in such a lockdown environment, and yet they're also forward-thinking enough to want a matrix deployment. It's wild. The variety of clients that we've got.
And these same clients are also excited about the fact that Hydrogen is a PWA that you can install on a phone, because often they have environments where phones are also locked down and you can't just install any app.
Yeah.
But if you have a web browser, you can just install it as PWA, and it works very nicely as well. Okay. So, anything else to talk about? Not really, no.
So the immediate future is getting E2E out, and then you'll ever think about other features after that, and maybe other view layers as well. Cool. Yeah. All right, then I'm going to say thank you. Thanks, Bruno.
Yeah, thank you for your time, Ben.
All right.
It's great talking to you.
Thanks, Matrix Live. Speak soon.